How we doing, Jets fans? I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. I am joined, as always, Friday night show, myself and Chris Schubert from the Draft Network. Chris, how we doing?
Doing well, Glenn. Apologies for the chaos behind me. I'm in the process of moving, and there's stuff everywhere. So the next time we do this, it'll look a little different. But I'm in the process of deconstructing my entire house to move, and it's not a very fun time.
Yeah, I think I may have some type of world record for a number of times I've moved in my life. I've got to be well into the 40s or 50s at this point. So I feel your pain. Chris has explained that strangers may knock on his door looking to look at his place. They're literally trying to move in before he's
Yes.
finished packing.
Yes, it has happened twice today where there has been a knock on the door and the doorbell has rung and somebody is trying to view the house while I still have it until the end of the month. It is very weird. So if you see me run away, that's exactly what's happening.
All right, we got you there. So let's get started, Chris. Right away, wanted to cover Flight 23, Episode 1. I checked it out last night. You said you watched it. What were your initial thoughts? Good, bad, topic-wise? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Flight 23 is appointment viewing as a Jets fan each and every offseason. The production level, the access, the devotion that the New York Jets as a team, as an organization has to producing that. You see it in the way that they promote it on social media. You see it in the people that they get to interview for it. They get Rich Eisen to narrate it. They bring in Peter Schrager. They bring in Mike Garafolo. I mean, they talk to everybody they humanly can, and the production level is a 10 out of 10. There's not a single complaint that I would levy against that. I found myself sitting there watching the 40-plus minute episode 1 on Aaron Rodgers and his journey to the New York Jets. And I found myself in a very familiar place as a Jets fan where I could see into the future. And I could see while I'm sitting there on my phone watching Flight 23, episode 1, and I went, boy, is this going to age poorly if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play well. Boy, is this going to age poorly if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt and he's not the starting quarterback for 17 games. And we're going to look back at this and be like, boy, did we go too far with what we did. And I understand that's what they have to do, and I understand the excitement. I'm excited too. It's the most, I think, buzz and optimism that has been around the team in a long time. But that pessimism that is still in my brain about this entire process did rear its ugly head last night. But again, production level 10 out of 10. I enjoyed it. It's fun. I thought it was cool from this perspective of how eager Aaron seemed to be, wanting to be involved and wanting to be a part of it. That I thought was very cool to see him, joking around with the people like, no, I won't wear the microphone. No, just kidding. Give me the microphone. He was having some fun with it, and I appreciated that. But overall, it didn't really change a whole lot about how I feel of like, this is a high wire act for one season that they are attempting to pull off in 2023.
Yeah, I think for the you almost feel for the production team because it's great work every year. Every season they do such a good job with it. But unfortunately, they're a team that since, they've been bad for so long, the people who put this together have never had a chance to do it for a good team and have some success that follows the work that they put in. So I won't say it bothered me for a lot of the episode, but there were a couple of moments where I had a similar thought where I thought, oh, this won't look good next year if things don't go as planned.
Well, that's Jets fans, right? That's what we do. Like,
right. What are we supposed to do? Run around being optimistic? Yeah,
right.
Because we've had so many things go our way over the past 50 years that how could you be anything but optimistic as a Jets fan? Nothing ever goes wrong. So yeah, we're all excited about Aaron Rodgers' arrival. I'm honestly excited. I like the episodes. I love the behind the scenes conversations about the draft picks. I love hearing the commentary on why we should take this guy, why this guy is a Jet. That's the stuff I love that I'm really looking forward to.
I'll share a take with you here, and I've shared it before, I think, on one of the various podcasts that I've hosted and or produced in my life. The Jets are probably going to be the team for Hard Knocks this year. They are one of the teams that is eligible. I have never, ever, and this is not a bit for the show, I have never seen an episode of Hard Knocks start to finish. I do not sit down and watch it. I do not sit down and consume it. If there's a cool clip that gets to social media the next day, I'll click on it and listen, but I will not watch an episode start to finish. And I'm going to tell you right now, if it is the New York Jets, I still will not watch Hard Knocks start to finish. Flight 23 is all I need. I don't need the.
Yeah, you have to explain why, because I'm one of those things. Like from a selfish fan standpoint, I want Hard Knocks, but I don't want it. Like I don't want that extra distraction thing in the room. Although, as someone reminded me earlier, they did win 11 games the last time they had Hard Knocks. True. But I guess I've heard enough players and coaches complain about the hassle of dealing with the guys that I don't want them there. But if they're there, I'm watching every second.
I just don't feel like there's enough gain from it as a fan, right? And if the clips that get to social that I see are the big highlights or the big takeaways, I feel like I'm good. I feel like I don't need to sit there and watch a full episode over the course of however many weeks it goes. So for me, it's just not something I've ever been drawn to. I've never been drawn to that level of behind the scenes access during training camp. And I don't watch the all or nothing in the middle of the season that they've done the last couple of years. They did one with the Cardinals. They did one with the Colts. I haven't watched any of those. It's just not something that has been a big appeal to me. For some reason, Flight 23 has appealed to me and I have watched it, but Hard Knocks has never had that draw for me.
Yeah, I think once they got Rodgers, I think that locks them.
Locked in. 100%
We'll see.
team, yeah.
Be shocked if they don't get it. Big market, big name. 5-6 primetime. National games. Tons of exposure for them this year. But wanted to move on. I won't go on too long about the contract aspect of this. Just wanted your opinion because we did a show last night, myself and Dylan Terraman. We had Scott Mason on. He talked about it. Scott did an interview where he spoke with Fox Sports, and Fox Sports basically said the Quinnen Williams deal was being held up by the Aaron Rodgers deal. That basically the Jets got Aaron Rodgers, but didn't have a plan in place to make the contract fit. The Jets, obviously, the dilemma there is they've got $100 million Rodgers. He's going to get all of that money. They have to find a way to spread that money out. He's at the minimum he can take this year, with next year's hit being $107 million, which obviously will not be happening. That has the Jets sitting at 40-some million over the cap at the moment. But if that's the case, what are your thoughts if they kind of pursued this deal, executed the deal without a plan in place on what would be next after he arrived? Because he's been here weeks now. They knew he was coming for months. He's been here for weeks. Still no deal reworked.
Yeah, and here's where I would fall on this. I think there's a middle ground that we can find here of surprised that they don't have a rework deal, but also not going to the extent of they did this trade without a complete plan in mind. I'm sure, this is my read of the situation, that they went into this with an idea of what they want this to look like. Now, they don't have to make any decisions on his future options until the beginning of the season, right? Technically, with the way that the contract is structured. So to me, I think they probably have multiple different versions of this contract. And it depends on some of the other things that they want to do. It's down there in the bottom of the screen that Quinnen Williams' contract is coming up. They need to work on an extension. I'm sure there's a version of a reworked Aaron Rodgers deal that comes in conjunction with a certain dollar amount associated for Quinnen Williams. We just randomly the other day, earlier this week, found out that the Jets reworked Carl Lawson's deal. You think that just happened out of thin air? You think that happened for no reason? No, that's a puzzle piece that probably goes to a larger thing. The Jets have $6.9 million or so in cap space before they reworked Carl Lawson's deal. They created $13 million in cap space. They didn't need to create extra cap space. They had a bunch of their rookies already signed. They only probably had, I think, like two guys that they had to sign. So they didn't really need the cap space. So why would you create additional cap space for yourself? Quinnen Williams, Aaron Rodgers rework deal. So for me, they probably got multiple different versions of this, and they'll pull that version out of a desk drawer somewhere and put it in front of Aaron and his agent once the Quinnen Williams stuff is done, because then they'll know what that cap number needs to look like, and then they'll be able to work Aaron's rework contract in there afterwards. So I'm not super concerned about it. They probably have multiple versions of this. And you said to me in the pre-show, and I remember the quote vividly, Connor Hughes of SNY, I feel like I mention him every week. It feels like we're just buddy-buddy, and I bring him up all the time. But he mentioned after the deal got done, when everybody was kind of a little concerned about the amount that the Jets gave up in terms of trade compensation and draft capital, he said, the people I talked to said, wait till you see the rework deal. Okay, well, those people probably had multiple versions of a rework deal, and that they knew one or two of them, or Rodgers agreed to, hey, whatever this looks like, I'm good. Like, just get it to me when you get it to me. And I think they're working through some of the other things. I think Hughes' extension is more important right now than Aaron Rodgers' rework deal. They'll get to Aaron's rework deal before the beginning of the season. I'm sure of it. And I'm sure it'll look just fine. I'm not super worried.
And this is the thing. Yeah, in terms of it getting done, I'm not worried. I think the concern is it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. Some people are saying Quinnen's not done because of Aaron. Other people are saying Aaron's not done because of Quinnen. And the report was saying that it is the Quinnen deal that isn't done because they don't know how to move Aaron's money around.
I'm not buying
it's a big task to say we've got to find a way to spread $107 million, spread it out in a way for a guy who may only be here for a year, two, maybe three. Three is unlikely, but it's a huge chunk of cash to spread out over a very small time frame. And Quinnen, my thing with Quinnen was if they were working that, even if it wasn't where they wanted it to be, I felt like if they were in the middle of the process, and Quinnen would obviously be kept abreast of what was going on, we wouldn't see that. You look, they're taking the stuff off socials. It's silly, but it does show that like he's not happy with where things are. So what will be. I'm sure it's going to get done. I'm surprised that that it's taken this long, and B, the number of people who I'm seeing who just kind of feel like, hey, if it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months. But the other part of that, though, Chris, as we've spoken and I think we've agreed that this team, while they've greatly improved their Super Bowl odds, they can still use some pieces. And they're a team that if they wanted, like, let's say tomorrow, Team X, it goes public that they have a high profile player who could really help the Jets, who suddenly isn't happy and has demanded a trade. The Jets, like, I feel like you always want some wiggle room, especially in the offseason, to be able to make a move if someone comes available. And the Jets right now, DeAndre Hopkins is a name we keep mentioning on our show. I know Scott Mason keeps mentioning it on Play Like a Jet because he is sort of the highest profile name who's been mentioned as being on the market. If the Jets decided tomorrow they wanted to make a run, like, he's got a big salary too. Like, I would expect him to be more aggressive at creating max cap space while the offseason is still ongoing. You've created a couple-year window for a Super Bowl, and you still need some pieces.
Yeah. So right now, I just wanted to look up something just to make sure that I'm not, speaking improperly when I say this. Aaron Rodgers' cap number for this season is $1.215 million. Counts for less than 1% of the cap. Now, that's mainly a procedural move because his 2024 cap hit is $107.6 million, 42% of the Jets cap that they have to spread out. But you know what they don't have to do? They don't have to change the 2023 number. They have to change the 2024 number. So when it comes to what you're saying, Glenn, talking about this offseason and being able to strike when an opportunity presents itself, right? Everyone talks about wide receiver help. Hunter Renfrow might become available. There's a report that he might get cut and be a post-June 1 cut.
He was another name we brought up last night.
From the Raiders. There's the Devontae Adams thing where he's not getting along with the GM, and then he says, no, we are getting along. That's a situation to monitor. DeAndre Hopkins, all the other potential June 1 names that could potentially become available. The Jets have cap space to be able to work that in. A Quinnen Williams deal, a long-term extension for Quinnen Williams, I think Q's only allocated for like $9 million this offseason. I'm going to do the thing where I look it up in real time. 9.5 is his cap hit for this season. If they do a rework deal, guess what? They'll lower the 2023 cap number. The big cap numbers will be down the road. So for the Jets operating in this win now window, they will have the cap space to be able to operate. The problem now is when you look at the New York Jets, right now they're carrying a bill of $43 million in the hole for 2024. Well, guess what? You immediately fix that by fixing the Aaron Rodgers contract. So I'm not super worried about them being able to maneuver or this stopping their ability to maneuver because, again, I think all of these deals that we're talking about right now, the Q deal and the Rodgers deal, the big numbers that are going to hit the books for the Jets aren't going to be until 2024 or 2025, and they're going to lower the hits, at least in Q's case, for 2023 to continue to give them that wiggle room. And, again, I don't think Carl's rework contract has hit this number yet either.
It hasn't. I looked at it. It's not in there yet.
They're at 6.3, and they're going to add a bunch of money to that. So I think they are totally fine if they want to go out and pursue some avenues to make their team better. So, again, I understand everybody's concern. Everybody wants Aaron Rodgers' rework deal because they want to see what it looks like. But guess what? They're not going to change the 2023 number. I understand the concern, but I think it's going to get done.
I think, well, like I said, it will get done. But I think given the size of the future hits, I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to put some of that money into this year so that the future hits aren't, unrealistic. Like, if you can get it to where you can give Aaron Rodgers an extra 10 this year and not have to give him 40 next year and 30 the year after that, and try to spread it out as evenly as possible. I understand there's limitations, but I guess that's my expectation, is for them to use every bit of space they have to spread it out as much as possible.
Sure, but you could also roll over the cap. So let's say they started the year with, they have 6 now. Let's say they
13 for Lawson.
13 from Lawson. That gets them to 19. Let's say they use another $9 million to do some other stuff, the Q deal, and they have $10 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's no different if they change Aaron's contract and add the $10 million to this year's number, or if they roll the $10 million into next year's cap and add an extra $10 million for them to allocate there. It's the same thing, right? They're going to use the money regardless. So to me, it doesn't really matter where they use it. It's just a matter of, does this stop them from being able to add players if opportunities present themselves? And I think the answer to that question is no. I think they are in a position to where if they want to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, they can. If they want to talk to Hunter Renfrow, if he does get cut from the Raiders, they could. I think all of those potential options are still on the table, even though they have 2 major contract questions that are still looming.
Yeah, I think that's the issue with Q is, as we said, or I can't remember if we said it or if it was mentioned last night, being 40 million over now, even if you get that to a manageable number, that's where Q's going to look at the first big number because he's not going to get huge money up front this year. But the Quinnen Williams deal, and again, this is what the report claimed, was that the Quinnen deal wasn't happening because you're 40 million over next year as of right now. And apparently Spot Rack and Over the Cap, for whatever reason, have wildly different numbers on this.
Yes, the old Spot Track versus Over the Cap battle.
I prefer Over the Cap.
That's what I use, yeah.
Yeah, I use Over the Cap, but Spot Rack usually has some pretty good info, and for them to have a gap that wide, I thought was really surprising. In trying to bring Quinnen Williams back. But let's talk about that. Let's get into Quinnen Williams. I mentioned this last season when it became clear that the Jets were going to continue with this defensive line rotation where it meant their best player, Quinnen Williams, was going to be off the field 30-40% of the time given, in any given week. And I went and you look at all the greats, all the other top tackles, they don't come off the field that much. These guys are playing 80-85% of the snaps, whereas Quinnen Williams will play 60-65%. And I felt like if you're going to limit his snaps, which could mean now the Jets, I'm sure, will claim one of the reasons Quinnen is as good as he is because we rest him so much and he stays fresh. Well, that's not really something you can prove because we can't go back and have him play those snaps and see how he would do. All we know is that other guys in his that echelon of tackle play a lot more snaps. And so now come time to negotiate a contract, I'm sure Quinnen Williams people aren't sitting there like they're going to argue on his behalf and say he would produce more if you guys played him more and another team would play him more and he'd be better there. So you can say that he only produced X amount, but you're limiting his production by sitting him so much. And his peers, who are many, as you pointed out on your show, TDN Daily the other day, he's got 700, 800, 900 snaps less than these guys and producing as much or more. And they're getting 22, 23 million. He's doing as much with less play time. That's going to bolster his argument to push his cap or his salary up past, 26, 27, 28 million.
You mentioned I did a whole show on this week after the report came out, or I shouldn't say the report, the removal of the Jets from his Twitter account. And I mentioned it, and I'll mention it here again. But that doesn't bother me. It's not a big deal. I'm not reading anything into that. And I think we as fans in this space need to just stop overreacting to things like that.
It's a nothing burger.
But I did talk about what is the holdup? What is stopping this deal from happening? And it's both a blessing and a curse for this conversation that we have other players at this position that signed deals this offseason. So there's a framework built into the talks. There's a framework built in of we can look at what Dexter Lawrence got just across the hall. We can look at what Jeffrey Simmons just got. We can look at what Daron Payne got. We can look at those three contracts and say, okay, where does Q stand in comparison to those three guys? And let's make a deal. The Aaron Donald deal is not going to be touched. It's just not. That's not going to happen. And he is at a tier, totally amongst himself. I think he's at like $31.6 million per season is the number. So Q slots in somewhere in the Jeffrey Simmons, Dexter Lawrence, Daron Payne tier. And the numbers that I shared are he is the lowest out of anybody. And I think Christian Wilkins was also in the graphic that I mentioned. Yep. He is in the lowest snaps of anybody in that tier by like 500 is the next closest guy to him. He's got the most sacks of that group. He's tied for the most forced fumbles. He's like 3 behind in tackles. Like he is so clearly the best player in that group, and he's doing it with less. He's at like 60. He was at 60% of snaps last year, whereas like I think Jeffrey Simmons, Daron Payne, and Dexter Lawrence are all in like the 78 to 85 range. Like those guys overwhelmingly are on the field. So from Q's perspective, it's like, okay, you have to be part of this rotation. As part of this rotation, I'm putting up numbers better than guys who are on the field more than me. So guess what?
Daron Payne played 87% last year.
Okay, I thought it was 87. I cut it off at 85 just to protect myself, but it was 87.
And it was 83 for Jeffrey Simmons.
And I think Dexter Lawrence was like 78.7. Like it was something like Lawrence, he was right in the mix there, close to 80%.
This has him at 82.
Okay, so all guys in the 80% of snaps. Guess what? Quinnen Williams, better statistically than those guys, playing less snaps. And so for him, it's easy. It's like, okay, let's beat that number. Let's be above that. And I think it's very clear that the way that this deal is ultimately going to end up is he is going to get above Jeffrey Simmons's number, which is 23.5. Anywhere between the $25 to $28 million range, I think is incredibly fair for Quinnen Williams over 4 years. So you're looking at 4 100, 4,104, 4,105. You can heap a ton of guaranteed money on him. He can be the highest non-Aaron Donald player at his position. He could have the most money. In terms of value, he'll have the most value at the position. He'll be the only player over $100 million at the position. He'll have the second highest annual average. He can probably get more total guaranteed money, and the stories can write themselves. So they might be disagreeing here and there on some small things, but I ultimately expect this to get done, and I expect it to get done 4 or 5 years. I think you're looking at $100+ million. If you go 5 years, you're looking at like 125.
Yeah, I was going to say 120, 125. Yeah.
But 4 years, $104 million, I think is incredibly fair, incredibly reasonable. It's market value. It's a little bit above that market value because Q is doing more with less snaps on the field as part of this rotation. He's the most important player on the Jets defense. I will continue to say that until I'm blue in the face. And so I think this gets done. I think Joe Douglas and everybody realize the New York Jets need Quinnen Williams on the field if they are going to go anywhere this season. So they are going to get this done.
Yeah, the numbers are out there. I should have saved the tweet. I saw a tweet earlier showing that they're defensively the Jets were 32nd in the league, and I think it was in quarterback pressures or sack rate when Quinnen Williams wasn't on the field, and when he was on the field, they were like 4th. Yeah. And listen, it's no big secret, right? I say all the time that myself and Dylan Terraman said. I feel like we said it after every game last year that Quinnen Williams on the corners make this thing go. Because the corners can cover, and it gives the D-line time to get home, and they get home like crazy when Quinnen is on the field.
What Quinnen Williams is able to do for this defense allows them to only rush 4 people,
yes,
which allows DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner to be what they are. That's no slight against Sauce. It's no slight against DJ. But Quinnen Williams, being a complete game wrecker, havoc creator in the middle of that defense, allows Robert Saleh to go, I've only got to rush 4 guys. And they put everybody else in coverage, and they look at opposing quarterbacks, and they say, good luck. Good luck when we're dropping 7 guys in coverage. Good luck throwing on DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. Have a good time.
Yeah, and I'm not listen, Quinnen Williams is a great player. If he keeps ascending at this rate, he'll be in the Hall of Fame conversation. But I'm not putting him in this player's class yet. But I said early in the year that this is kind of reminiscent to me of a time I happened to live in Florida, not far from Tampa, during the Warren Sapp days. And you saw that in Tampa all the time. He was a game wrecker in the middle of that defense. And all Tampa did was rush 4 and drop everybody back. And they were able to get home with 4 with Warren Sapp leading the way because he was eating up and beating double teams. And then you had some other good pass rushers and D linemen on that front who would draw one-on-one matchups all day. So Sapp kind of made that thing go just as Quinnen Williams makes it go for the Jets. So listen, he as we've said, it's going to get done. Mm-hmm. The whole question here, the reason I brought it up, I've been surprised at the length of time the Rodgers thing has taken. I thought when, as it was being rumored, I kind of thought that was one silver lining. Well, at least when this happens, they've now had a month and a half to get the financials in order. So when he walks in the door, the contract will be ready, which obviously wasn't the case. And now we're a few weeks out from that, and we'll see what happens.
But what if the contract is already reworked? Right? That is an outcome here where there is already Aaron and the team have agreed to a rework deal of a framework. They just haven't submitted it to the league yet because they want to get the Q deal done to make sure all the math works. Like that is a possibility.
But I mean, I guess I think in that much time you would know what works and it could be submitted. I don't get the lag.
Right. But you also had a lag in reworking.
And again, But as I said the other day, I think if that was the case, if it was just a matter of submitting things and everything was done, and again, I'm 100% on board. And I said the other day, modern day free agency, it's like, or guys just coming up on the end of their deals. It's as if they have a checklist of things they have to do. And on that checklist is take team off my social media. Like it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It's an empty gesture to kind of bring attention to the cause by the fans. I get that. So, but if everything was worked out and there were deals in place, there wouldn't be a need to take that step. Like Everyone would just be going about their business and not saying anything publicly about not having a deal. Well, I mean, Quinnen Williams is literally liking every tweet on social media that talks about how much money he should get.
I meant the Rodgers rework deal, not the
right.
Q deal. The Q deal isn't done. They don't have that framework worked
Okay,
out.
I thought you were saying they were both done. Okay.
The Rodgers side of it could be done, where Rodgers has looked at a contract that the Jets have put in front of him, and he said, yep, that's good with me. And the Jets just haven't filed it yet because they're working on the Q stuff, because they're working on freeing up money with Carl Lawson, because they're working on these other things, and they know in their back pocket, we've got a rework deal for Rodgers. At the moment we need to, we can put this in place and get this done. And to go back to a conversation we were having before, Spotrac has a totally different contract for Aaron Rodgers than Over the Cap does. So nobody knows what this thing looks like. Like it's completely confusing.
I think someone said they were probably projecting the new deal, or like I don't know. I don't know why
they have him. They have him at the same cap number, $1.2 million for this year. But then next year they have him at 37.4, and then 56 in 2025, and then 50.1 in 2026, which is
so they're projecting years that don't exist.
And they're projecting a number that doesn't exist, because add the 56, the 50, and the 37, that's 137. The over the cap number is just a $107 million cap hit. So the numbers don't match. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And 107 is what we've heard thrown around by a lot of outlets, if that's what he owed. So
we'll just let this process play out and let the contract come together. But I listen, Glenn, I'm the pessimist on the show pretty regularly. It's kind of my brand. It's kind of what I do. I have full confidence that by the time week 1 rolls around, Aaron Rodgers is going to have a brand new deal that we're going to be able to look over. Q is going to have a brand new contract extension, and both of those guys are going to be playing for the Jets in week 1. I'm pretty confident.
Oh yeah, like I've said, we don't disagree that a deal will get done. I guess, like I said, with the amount of time they had to prep, I figured it would be a foregone thing and it'd be wrapped up.
We said the same thing about the trade in the first place,
because we know, why would they, like the comment from Connor Hughes doesn't get out there unless the Jets give him that info. Right. Like the Jets wanted Connor Hughes to let people know, hey, the deal's done. Let them know it looks good. So at that point, you're thinking, oh, this is going to wrap up in the next couple of days. Like they're letting reporters see the deal, but now it's not done. And it's again, I guess I wouldn't see the logic in saying like, hey, we've got this deal. We've all agreed to it. This is what it's going to be. But we're not going to sign it and we're not going to file it, But either way, they're going to be under contract. That's what matters. They're going to be Jets in 2023 for what we hope will be their first, meaningful playoff run in a very long time. Whether or not they get there, we'll see. Didn't love Rodgers saying he's not here to be the savior on Flight 23 last night. I thought to myself, no, that is your role. That might be they might remove Rodgers from your jersey and put savior on there. That's why they paid what they paid to get you.
That's how a lot of fans view him, right? That they view him as the savior, but I don't know if he necessarily views him that way. Yeah, I mean, listen, my pessimism over this whole trade and this whole situation is that it's an all-in gamble on one season, right? But they can very easily prove me wrong. If they're the team hosting the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season, then it's all worth it, and we'll look back at Flight 23 like it was the start of this great journey. Yeah. And I hope that's the case. I really, truly do.
Listen, I hope I'm playing that thing on a loop by the time the season ends and everything wraps up.
Glenn, if that happens, I want us to replay the episodes. We'll just come on here and we'll live react to the episodes.
Live watch and react.
We'll put our old episodes on and be like, wow, what a bunch of dummies these guys are as we're wearing Super Bowl t-shirts. Like that's what I want this. That's how I want this.
Absolutely. All right. Chris Schubert of the Draft Network. Thanks so much for joining us. Chris, go ahead and give out your handle and your daily show there.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Schubert _ I tweet draft related stuff, Jets related stuff, all sorts of things over there. And then TDN Daily, Monday through Friday in your podcast feed, wherever you listen to your podcast, and on the Draft Network YouTube channel at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We cover everything football, college football, pro football, NFL draft. I mean, we cover it all, scouting. It all gets covered on the show Monday through Friday. So check us out over there as well.
All right, you can get me on Twitter at JN Radio _Glenn.
Change the
JN Radio.
You know what? I'll look it up for you here because
no, that's it. I got it right. It's JN Radio _Glenn.
That's correct. Yes,
and you can get Dylan Terraman at D Terraman. We'll be back Thursday night. Myself and Dylan Thursday at 6:30. Chris and I will be back Friday night. Thanks for tuning in, Jets.